Part 1. The Late Night Hunger. A drive-through nightmare. It was one of those nights where exhaustion clung to me like a second skin. The kind where you're so tired that even the thought of driving home feels like a monumental task. My shift had run way longer than expected, and by the time I finally clocked out, it was well past 10 p.m. My stomach grumbled, reminding me that I hadn't eaten since lunchtime. Normally I would have just toughed it out and grabbed something from my fridge when I got home, but tonight was different. I was starving. The highway was mostly empty, an occasional car speeding past, their headlights disappearing into the darkness ahead. I lived in a quieter part of town, far from the busy late-night diners that littered the city. My best bet for food was whatever was still open near the next exit. I glanced at the glowing green sign overhead. Exit 9, gas, food, lodging. That would have to do. Taking the exit, I found myself in a dimly lit area. There was a gas station, its neon lights flickering as if they could barely keep themselves alive. A little further down, I spotted the golden arches of a McDonald's, standing like a beacon in the darkness. Relief washed over me. Finally, food. But as I pulled into the empty parking lot, something about the place felt wrong. It wasn't just that the lot was deserted, it was the stillness of it. Usually, even late at night, you'd expect to see at least a few cars idling in the drive-thru, or an employee taking out the trash. But here, there was nothing. Just my car, my headlights illuminating the front doors. The inside lights were on, the dining area looked open, but something gnawed at the back of my mind. Why was it so quiet? Still, my hunger outweighed my caution. I parked near the entrance, killed the engine, and stepped out. The cool night air prickled against my skin. As I approached the glass doors, I thought I saw something move inside. A shadow passing behind the counter. Okay, I muttered to myself, shaking off the unease. They're probably just in the back. I pushed the door open, and a little bell chimed above me. Silence. I stepped inside, and immediately I knew something was off. There was no music playing, no low hum of a soda machine, not even the faint sound of a fryer cooking in the background. The place was empty, yet it smelled like food had just been made. The scent of fresh fries and warm bread lingered in the air, but there were no customers, no employees, no one. I walked toward the counter, my footsteps echoing against the too clean tiled floor. Hello? My voice felt too loud in the emptiness. Nothing. Maybe they were in the back. Maybe the door had been left unlocked by accident. Just as I was debating whether to turn and leave, the lights flickered. Then, in an instant, they went out. The entire restaurant was plunged into darkness. My breath hitched. The only source of light now came from the parking lot outside, filtering through the large windows, casting long shadows across the floor. I took an uneasy step backward, my heart hammering in my chest. What the hell was going on? A noise. Soft. Shuffling. It came from behind the counter. I froze, my eyes struggling to adjust to the dim light. Slowly, from the direction of the kitchen, a tall figure emerged. I felt my stomach drop. The man stepped forward, just barely illuminated by the parking lot glow. Something about him was wrong. He was not wearing a McDonald's uniform. No hat, no apron, nothing. Just dark clothes, heavy boots, and a vacant stare. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then I saw his hands clench into fists. Everything inside me screamed, "Go!" I turned on my heel and bolted for the door, my sneakers skidding slightly against the floor as I pushed forward. Behind me, I heard it. His footsteps, heavy and fast. He was following me. I slammed into the glass door, shoving it open so hard it nearly bounced back at me. The moment my feet hit the pavement, I sprinted toward my car, fumbling for my keys in my pocket. A quick glance back, he was outside now. He had followed me out. I reached my car, my hands shaking as I yanked the door open and dove inside. The man was closing the distance, his movements eerily fast despite his large frame. My fingers fumbled over the ignition, my breath coming in frantic gasps. Come on, come on. The engine roared to life and I slammed the car into drive, tires screeching against the pavement as I sped out of the parking lot. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst from my chest. In the rearview mirror, I saw him, standing in the middle of the lot, watching me leave. His head tilted slightly, as if he were memorizing my face. I didn't stop. Didn't breathe until I was miles away. The McDonald's nothing but a speck in my mirror. When I finally reached home, I locked every door, every window. Sitting in my darkened living room, the adrenaline still coursing through my veins. Who the hell was that man? And why? Why was the restaurant open but completely empty? Part 2. The Vanishing McDonald's. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw him, that silent figure, standing in the empty McDonald's, his dark clothes blending into the shadows, his vacant stare fixed on me. Even though I had locked my doors and double-checked my windows, the unease in my chest never fully went away. I kept imagining the man standing outside my house, just beyond the glow of the streetlights, waiting. By morning, I convinced myself that I had overreacted. Maybe he was just some homeless guy who wandered in. Maybe the employees had all gone on break at the same time. Maybe the power outage had been a coincidence. I wasn't convinced. I needed to know if I had imagined it. So later that afternoon, after hours of debating, I finally got in my car and drove back to that McDonald's. The exit felt eerily familiar, like I was retracing the steps of a nightmare I hadn't quite woken up from. The gas station was still there, its flickering neon sign buzzing in the daylight. But as I approached where the McDonald's should have been, my stomach twisted into a cold knot of fear. It was gone. I slammed on the brakes. I was in the right place. I knew I was. The layout of the area was exactly the same. The gas station, the cracked pavement, the trees swaying behind the lot. But where the McDonald's had been just hours ago, there was nothing but an empty lot. No golden arches, no building, not even a foundation left behind. Just dirt and gravel, as if nothing had ever been built there in the first place. I got out of my car, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. "What the hell?" I muttered, stepping onto the lot. It didn't make sense. The lights had been on last night. I had walked inside. I had been chased out of here. And now it was as if the entire place had never existed. I crouched down, running my fingers through the dirt, half expecting to find a piece of tile, a receipt, anything that would prove I hadn't imagined it. But the lot was completely clean. That's when I noticed something else. Footprints, leading from where the McDonald's should have been, straight toward the trees. My breath caught in my throat. The prints were deep, uneven, like someone had been running, and they were fresh, too fresh. I slowly followed them, my footsteps crunching softly against the gravel. The prints disappeared into the woods, swallowed up by the thick underbrush. Something about it made my skin crawl. I looked around, my pulse thudding in my ears. The lot was silent. Too silent. The humming gas station in the distance was the only sign of life, but even that felt far away. I should leave. Every instinct in my body told me to get back in my car, drive away, and never think about this place again. But I didn't, because I saw something else. Further into the woods, just past where the footprints disappeared, I spotted something metal, half hidden by the tall grass. A McDonald's sign. It was old, rusted at the edges, almost swallowed by nature. But I recognized it. The same sign I had seen just last night, glowing under the fluorescent lights of the restaurant. I backed away so fast I nearly tripped. That wasn't possible. My car suddenly felt miles away, the trees too close, the air too thick. I turned and sprinted back, heart hammering against my ribs. When I reached my car, I practically threw myself inside, slamming the door shut, locking it. I was breathing too fast. I gripped the steering wheel, my hands shaking. I looked at the lot one last time, and then I saw him, standing at the edge of the trees, watching me. The same dark figure from last night. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I floored it, tires skidding against the gravel as I sped away, my pulse racing. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. I didn't want to see if he was following me. Part 3, The Man in the Rearview. I drove faster than I ever had in my life. The world outside the car blurred into streaks of neon and darkness, the occasional streetlight casting eerie shadows across my dashboard. My fingers gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles ached. I told myself not to look back. Don't check the rearview mirror. Don't check. But some horrible instinct, some deep, primal fear, forced my gaze upwards. He was there, not in the car, but close. Through the mirror, I saw a figure standing at the side of the road, just barely illuminated by my taillights. The same dark silhouette, the same unnerving stillness. He was too far away for me to make out any features, but I knew it was him. And then, as if he could feel me watching, his head tilted. I looked away so fast my neck cracked. It was impossible. He had been standing at the edge of the woods when I sped away. There was no way he could have gotten here this quickly. Unless I forced that thought away. I focused on the road ahead. The highway stretched out in front of me, empty, the occasional flicker of headlights in the distance. I just needed to get home, to lock my doors, to pretend tonight never happened. But the unease in my chest only grew worse, because the longer I drove, the more I saw him, standing by gas stations, in the shadows of abandoned buildings, at intersections just beyond the reach of the streetlights. Every time I passed, I caught just a glimpse, a fraction of a second where I could have sworn I saw that same dark outline. It was like he was waiting for me, just ahead, no matter how fast I drove. I checked the time. It was past midnight now. And then, finally, I reached my turn. My neighborhood wasn't far, just a couple of miles down a back road. I turned onto it, my headlights slicing through the darkness, the familiar trees lining the street like silent sentinels. I had never felt so relieved to see my own house. As I pulled into the driveway, I let out a shaky breath. Home. I sat there for a moment, gripping the wheel, trying to convince myself to move, to step out, to unlock my front door. But something inside me whispered, "Check the mirror one more time." I shouldn't have, because he was standing at the end of my driveway. My breath hitched, my stomach dropped. The same dark figure, still, silent, staring. I could barely see his face, just a hint of a shadowed expression, the glint of eyes that shouldn't be there. My body screamed at me to run, to get out of there. But then, he took a step forward, and I panicked. I threw open the car door, sprinted to my front porch, my hands fumbling with the keys. My breath came in ragged gasps. I could hear him behind me, his footsteps, slow but deliberate, getting closer. I jammed the key into the lock, twisted it, and practically threw myself inside. I slammed the door shut, locked it, bolted it. Then I backed away, my chest rising and falling in frantic, uneven breaths. Silence. I pressed myself against the wall, straining to hear anything. A creak of the porch, a breath on the other side of the door. But there was nothing. I inched forward, peering through the peephole. The driveway was empty. He was gone. I let out a shaky breath. For the first time in hours, I felt a flicker of relief. Maybe I had imagined it. Maybe the fear had twisted reality into something worse than it really was. I turned away from the door. I needed to sit down, to breathe, to think. But then, just as I took my first step toward the living room, a loud knock echoed through the house. I froze. The sound was slow, deliberate, and it came from the window. Part 4. The window knock. The knock came again. 3 slow, deliberate raps. I froze. My breath caught in my throat. Not the door, the window. The front window, right beside the living room, was too close, too exposed. My stomach twisted. I hadn't drawn the curtains. I had been so panicked when I rushed inside that I hadn't even thought to. My mind screamed, "Don't look, don't look." But some awful, morbid instinct forced me to turn. Through the glass, in the dim glow of my porch light, he stood there. The man. No longer a shadowy figure in the distance. No longer a fleeting presence at the edge of my vision. He was here, standing just feet away. His face was still obscured by the darkness outside, but I could make out his shape more clearly now. His clothes were dark and tattered, as though he had been walking through the woods for days. His hands, long, thin fingers, rested gently against the glass. And then, he smiled. A slow, unnatural curl of his lips, like he was enjoying this. I stumbled back, nearly tripping over my own feet. My body screamed, run, hide, escape. But I couldn't move, because then he raised his hand, and with one deliberate movement he tapped the glass again. I bolted, straight to the kitchen. The hallway leading there was shrouded in shadows, my own ragged breathing filling the space. My hands trembled as I yanked open drawers, desperately searching for something, anything, to defend myself. A knife, a bat, something. My fingers found a heavy frying pan and I clutched it tight, my heart hammering in my chest. The knock came again. Closer. Not the window this time. The back door. I whipped around. My body was in full panic mode now. How? He had been at the front window just seconds ago. How had he gotten to the back so fast? I barely managed to take a breath before I heard it. The doorknob rattling. I lurched forward, slamming the deadbolt into place. My shaking hands fumbled to check the second lock just to be sure. Locked. Secure. Safe. But the rattling didn't stop. A slow, lazy twisting of the handle, like he wasn't even trying to break in, just testing it. And then, a whisper, right on the other side of the door. I couldn't understand the words. The voice was low, hoarse, inhumanly soft. But somehow, I knew it was meant for me. I squeezed my eyes shut. I told myself this wasn't real. This couldn't be real. It had to be some sick nightmare. But then the whispering stopped. For a second I thought he was gone. Until, slam, the entire door shook violently, like something massive had just hurled itself against it. I screamed. The frying pan slipped from my hands, clattering to the floor. I didn't wait to see what would happen next. I ran up the stairs, into my bedroom. I slammed the door shut behind me and locked it. My chest heaved, my vision swimming with terror. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my fingers barely able to function as I tried to dial 911. No signal. No. I stared at the screen, my heart plummeting. I had full bars just minutes ago. My Wi-Fi was still connected, but the signal icon for my phone carrier was completely gone. The room felt too quiet. I strained my ears, listening. Nothing. Had he left? I slowly, cautiously approached the window, my breath catching in my throat. The street outside was empty. The porch light flickered, the wind whispered through the trees. But he was gone. Or at least, I thought he was. Then, that creak. Not from outside. From inside the house. The sound of a footstep. On the stairs. I couldn't breathe. He was inside. I backed away from the door. The wood groaned as something pressed against it. My hands shook as I grabbed the closest thing I could find, a lamp, the cord jerking out of the wall as I lifted it. Another creak. The air in the room grew thick, heavy. I could hear it now. The slow, deliberate breathing on the other side of the door. Deep. Shallow. Then, the handle twisted. I clenched my teeth, gripping the lamp tighter. And just as I thought he was about to force the door open, silence. I stood there, waiting, my pulse hammering against my skull. But he never came in. And that was somehow worse, because it meant he was still there, waiting, listening, smiling. Part 5. The Man in the Shadows. I stood there, my back pressed against the farthest wall of my bedroom, my grip on the lamp so tight my knuckles turned white. My breath came in shallow, panicked bursts, ears straining for any sound beyond the door. Nothing. No rattling. No footsteps. No whispering. Just silence. But I knew he was still there. The quiet wasn't a sign of safety, it was a trap. I forced myself to move, inching toward the door as if any sudden motion might trigger something waiting just beyond it. Slowly, carefully, I placed my ear against the wood, heart pounding so violently I could hear it in my skull. At first, there was nothing. And breathing, so soft, so deliberate, like someone savoring the moment, like someone who knew I was there, frozen in fear. A shaky exhale left my lips, and immediately, the breathing on the other side stopped. He knew I was listening. I backed away again, almost tripping over the edge of my bed. I couldn't just stay here, trapped like an animal. I had to get out. The window. It was my only option. I turned toward it, gripping the frame with sweaty hands, ready to throw it open and climb down. But as I lifted the glass, my eyes flicked downward, and my stomach dropped. There he was, standing directly below, in the glow of the flickering porch light, looking up at me. I gasped and stumbled back, my body trembling with a fresh wave of panic. How? He had been upstairs. He had been outside my door. And yet, now he was outside again. The realization sent a cold chill through me. There was no way he could have moved that fast. No way he could be two places at once. Unless there was more than one. My breath hitched in my throat. I slowly crept back toward the window, heart hammering so loudly it drowned out every other sound. I forced myself to peek down again, praying that somehow I had imagined it. But no, he was still there. And now he was grinning. His face, partially illuminated by the light, revealed an unnatural, twisted expression, lips curled up in a smile that didn't quite reach his dark, hollow eyes. And then, he lifted a hand and waved. I jerked back from the window so fast I nearly fell. This wasn't just some lunatic trespassing on my property. This was something worse. Something that didn't move like a person should. Something that appeared and disappeared at will. Something that was playing with me. I had to get out. No more hesitation, no more second guessing. I grabbed my phone, still no signal, and turned to my closet, searching for anything I could use. My eyes landed on my old baseball bat, tucked in the corner. I grabbed it and held it tight. If I was going to make it out, I needed to move fast. I unlocked my bedroom door with shaking fingers and slowly twisted the knob, bracing myself for whatever was waiting on the other side. The hallway was empty, dark, still. I forced myself to step out, every nerve in my body screaming at me to turn back, to hide. But I couldn't. I wouldn't. I took a cautious step forward, then another. My house had never felt this alien before. Every shadow stretched too long. Every noise felt like a warning. I turned the corner toward the staircase, heart pounding. Then I saw it. The front door. It was wide open. A chill ran through me, my blood turning to ice. I hadn't left it open. I knew I hadn't. And yet the door stood there, slightly ajar, swaying gently in the cold night air. My mind screamed at me to run, but I couldn't move, because standing in the doorway, just inside my house, was him. Or at least it looked like him. The same dark, ragged clothing, the same unnatural grin. But something was wrong. He wasn't moving, just standing there. His body was twisted slightly to one side, head tilted too far, his eyes, empty and unblinkingly, locked onto me. A horrible realization hit me all at once. This wasn't a man. Not anymore. I gripped the bat tighter, forcing myself to step forward, to get closer, to confirm what I already knew. And then, as if sensing my approach, the thing at the door lurched forward. Too fast, too unnatural. I screamed and swung the bat with everything I had. It connected. A sickening crack echoed through the room. But the thing, the man, the intruder, whatever it was, didn't fall. Didn't even flinch. It just stood there, head tilted even more now, its grin widening. Then, it spoke. "You left the door open." The voice came from below, wrong, distorted, like multiple voices layered on top of each other. I staggered back, my vision tunneling with pure panic. Then, it took another step forward. I ran. I don't even remember how I made it outside. One second I was inside, gripping the bat like it could save me. The next I was sprinting through my yard, bare feet slamming against the pavement, cold air stabbing at my lungs. I didn't stop running. Not until I reached the street, gasping for breath, heart threatening to burst out of my chest. I turned back once, just once. The house stood there, silent. The door was closed. And the man, or whatever he was gone. But I knew, that this wasn't over. Like if you like horror stories, fine. You may your thoughts or share your own paranormal experiences. Subscribe to Johan Co. Horror for more horror stories.